You're here with Joan Jerkovich, your life coach on News Radio 1150 KSAL, and I am bringing my listeners what I consider to be one of the most important shows I may have ever done. We're talking about harassment in the workplace, and I have a guest with me right here in the studio. Her name is Roxanne Bell, and many of you here in our community locally will know who she is, and I didn't know this about my close personal friend, and yes, I would call her that in every sense of the word. But we were sitting at coffee the other day with a group of our friends. There were 6 of us. And of course, the local issue coming out about the sexual harassment allegations against our new director of the health department were something that all the women, I have to say, non-politically, very, very concerned. We as women are concerned, and we want to be heard. And Roxanne is here. Brave soul. Welcome so much for being here. She is here to, what I will say, tell her truth. I don't want to call it a story. She's here to tell her truth. So welcome, Roxanne. I want to give you the audience.
Thank you, Joan. In my last 40 years of my career, I have to tell you I've worked with the most phenomenal, talented, wonderful people in the world. And when I tell this story, I don't want people looking at my past work history and thinking, oh, it was that person or that. No, that's not what I'm here for. And I don't want anyone wrongly implicated with my stories. But what I do want to do is give women who face this same situation in their workplace to know that it's wrong, it shouldn't happen, and it's against the law. When this happens to you, the first thing you think is, oh, what's wrong with me that this is happening? The first thing you think is, oh, this isn't right, this is wrong, and you feel very nervous. Sometimes you feel almost afraid because you don't know where to go at first. You're a little panicked, just like when you see the funnel cloud from a tornado, you're thinking, oh, I need to seek shelter. Ah, and we all know.
It sneaks up on you, takes you by surprise.
And at first, you might laugh. You might kind of look around to see if anybody was listening. And the best thing that can happen is there is a witness. But, you know, in over my years, again, 97% of the people I worked with have been fantastic. It's just that 3% that were jerks and just happened to be men. And
were there more than one man that you had this situation?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Joan, with my first job, I remember sitting at my desk, and my supervisor, now this is many, many years ago, and like I said, I've lived lots of different places in the state of Kansas, but the first job, the supervisor came up behind me and said, Roxanne, I'm going to stick a pop bottle up your, yes.
A man said that?
A man said that to me. And
oh my goodness.
I was quite a young woman then.
Yeah, what year
I was
about
on
was
the air.
this?
I was working in radio. And I just had
yikes.
Turned off the mic, the advertisement was playing. He said this to me and I'm like, oh, what'd I do?
In regard to what?
Oh.
Was he unhappy with you?
He wanted
Had you said something on air that he didn't
No,
like?
it wasn't anything wrong because I looked at him and said, what? Why would you say that to me? He says, oh, I just wanted to get you excited.
Eek. Ick.
Inappropriate.
And you were married at the time?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. Long-term marriage even to this day.
Yes.
And he said that. I want to stick a pop bottle
up your,
yes. And we know what you're going to say.
Yeah, it's a little 3-letter word.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that had me upset. And when I, of course, when you go home and tell your husband this kind of thing, he's ready to, you know, do something drastic. So, you know, I just chalked it up to poor behavior on somebody's fault. I just went on with life. I would say.
So you're saying in that instance you chose not to report it to management. Okay.
Right.
And I totally understand that.
No.
Now was that an isolated incident with this person?
This person was always on the edge.
Okay. Okay.
And you knew that, you know, you just kind of had to watch out for him. He was very young, very uneducated, and probably felt a little intimidated, and yet trying to look powerful and big at the same time. Some people get that all messed up. But yeah, I didn't go to to tell anybody about it. I was new in my job, new in my career. He was my supervisor.
Oh, he was.
And this was back in the days.
Back in the days. And especially if he was a supervisor, because for some reason I thought maybe he was someone working in the studio with you, you were doing radio, that maybe didn't like the fact you had the big job. You know, you were a live radio person, reporter, or whatever. But you said this was a supervisor. Your supervisor did this to you.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
yes.
wow.
And you know, when these things happen to you, especially for me, I automatically think, whoa, what have I done wrong?
Yes, I hate that, Roxanne.
I hate that feeling.
hate that, but I get it.
And I want women to know that that's not the first thought you should have, because someone has made a mistake and said something wrong to you. I mean, obviously that person needed to apologize. And when they don't apologize and they act mad about it, then you've really got a tough situation at work. That's one I didn't want. There have been other situations. Some of them I don't know whether it was really sexual assault, but because I felt bad, and because it was a man doing it, I guess it is sexual assault.
Yes, I've done some research working up this show, and I have to tell you that anything that you feel is untoward, it makes you uncomfortable, it makes you uneasy in the workplace. It can even be a guy that just wants to maybe even, he's attracted to you, he wants to ask you on a date or for coffee. The real key that I'm hearing from some HR people and even legal people I've been talking with are that if you say to them, no thank you, or I'm not interested, or please don't ask again, and they persist, regardless of what it is, if you've tried to confront it and it persists, absolutely.
Well,
and it may seem innocuous. I was like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the pop bottle story you told, we know that's sexual harassment to the nth degree.
Yeah.
But no, truly, a situation where maybe a coworker just keeps trying to get you to go out on a date, much less we know the coworkers who try to get you to do other things. I've talked to women who've called me for my radio show and said, the married men coming around wanting me to go to bed with them. You know, what do you do with that? That's
wow.
Clear cut. But you're absolutely right. And I'm glad that you're speaking to some of these, let's call them the nuances, the gray zones. You knew in your own instinctual womanness, you knew your gut instinct, your instincts as a woman said, I'm uncomfortable. And so what were some of the other stories, Roxanne, other issues you had with men?
Let's see, other instances would be, I would be the new man on the job, new woman on the job, and I'd be sitting at my desk doing my work, and I'd feel someone rubbing my shoulders. And I would turn around and see someone, I didn't know him. I mean, I'd seen him in the office, knew what their job was, but not formally introduced to him, and didn't even know their first name. And I was caught off guard, and I went, oh, wait, I don't need a back rub. Thanks, but no thanks. And that was my signal.
That is bizarre, because I thought maybe that, you did tell me that story. I heard a little piece of it at coffee, but I missed the fact that you didn't even know this person.
No.
You didn't know this man.
Had not been
I
introduced.
thought you had some coworker relationship with him where maybe you were sort of friendly and he felt...
No.
That is creepy.
Well, this individual
Creepy.
had been there for a long time, and apparently was kind of like the grandpa at work. And he enjoyed hugging women, and they enjoyed getting a hug from them. And that's all fine and good if you really enjoy it. But it wasn't going to happen with me. I don't like physical contact with men I barely know at work and feel like I have to go, oh, ha, 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 how nice, you're so sweet, you're so cute. No. That's not going to happen. Oh, I mentioned it to my supervisor, and he kind of poo-pooed it and said, oh, that's just George. He's like that with all the girls. He's just a nice guy. You don't have to worry about him. He'd never hurt a fly. Well, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This reminds me of a lady I talked to on my radio show some time back. Now, she was telling us about, at her age, in her 70s, she was a single career woman working in the Mad Men days. You know,
Oh,
like
my
the
gosh.
movies. She was literally it. And she said all the women knew not to get on the elevator with Mr. Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Because Mr. Bob would always be rubbing up to them, slapping them on the rear, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And it was very much played off like that. Now, you're much younger. You are younger than her, so, you know, that's still shocking that, again, with him touching you in a way that made you very uncomfortable.
Well, and it didn't stop there. I remember walking in the hall, and this gentleman saw me and just stretched out his arm big and wrapped it around me and pulled me in close and continued walking with me and smiling, like we're just the best of buddies. And I unfurled myself from him and pulled away and said, no, you do not put your arm around me. I don't appreciate that. That shouldn't happen again. And at that point, I did go to my supervisor again, and he said, well, did you tell him you didn't like it? I said, I most certainly did. He says, well, if it happens again, you need to tell him again.
Oh, gee. Okay.
And that's not what I wanted to hear. I said,
no.
It's not happening again, because I'll call someone else in other than you if it happens again. He knows clearly not to touch me. I don't want it. And
because this was a second report on the same person to the same supervisor who the only support they're giving you, or advice, let's say, is to keep dealing with it, keep telling him you don't like it. I'm with you. At what point do you kind of come in and say, wait a minute, I need help, I need assistance here? I'm so glad that you're speaking so openly about this, Roxanne, because for me, there are women out there who are not as assertive as you and I are. You know, we know that about ourselves. We're self-assured women, you know, but there are those that also, you know, were married at the time. You probably had your husband's career and paycheck to fall back on. There are so many times that women who are single moms trying to support themselves not only want to report this, but are concerned that they're going to be called, you know, the whistleblower type and fired.
And never to find a job again.
Never, and that's a huge issue. I'm glad you brought that up, because the other issue then becomes they don't get a good reference. They don't get a good job reference, which carries them into the next job where hopefully they don't find harassing people. So how did this evolve? So you had two instances. You reported to management. I like that you confronted this manager. You came in and you said, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, if you're not going to give me the results,
how did he deal with that?
In a clinic that allows that kind of thing to happen. When I said I don't like it, but I start feeling bad about myself. What kind of creep am I that I don't like to be hugged? But that's kind of the feeling I got from other people that I worked with. Oh, come on. He's a nice guy. He's harmless.
He's a grandpa type.
He's the grandpa type. What's wrong with you? Don't let it bother you, ladies. It's wrong, and you don't have to put up with it. The other time I wanted to tell you about was when another man I barely knew seemed to really take an interest in me at work. And he would be walking down my hallway where my office was and would make some kind of comment about how good I look today. Oh, of course, you always look good. And, you know, it's okay to get a compliment, but there's a compliment and then there's abuse when it gets carried too far. This individual was doing things that I didn't appreciate and saying things. And it caught me off guard. And I just said, oh, no thanks. No thanks. Or I would even not look at him very nice. I didn't smile. I didn't show that his comments fell on eager ears. But he kept showing up at things that I was at. And one time he was actually at the door that I come into at work. He was standing there with another gentleman. So I had a witness. And he started saying, why are you coming to work so late? You're late. You shouldn't be here so late. Everybody else gets here on time. Is it because you have a college degree and you think you're smarter than the rest of us? Joan, my hours were different because of the job I did.
Of course.
And so it was none of his business. And
that was a lot of
him.
Personalizing his own insecurities.
So I said, you know, this is none of your business when I come in and when I leave. And walked in the door, and then I was mad. As soon as I saw the man that was standing with him in his office, I went in and told him that was wrong. It was not going to be taken anymore. And the man said, well, you know, I'm glad you told me about it, but I don't think he meant anything by it. And he acted like maybe I was being a little irate. I then went to my supervisor and told him, and he was upset at this point. He said, you know, this isn't right. I will make sure this doesn't happen again. And then I went to the director of PR and told them the problem with this individual. And he said, did you tell him it bothered you? And I said, well, I told him it wasn't right, that it wasn't his business. She says, well, you have to tell him next time he talks to you in a way you don't like. You have to say, I don't like this. Please do not talk to me anymore unless it's imperative to the job or the function. So I had myself all set up to confront him, but I was afraid. I was afraid to confront this man, how angry I was and how it was going to come out when I did have to confront him again. Fortunately, I didn't have to confront him because I never saw him in the office again.
What happened to him? How come he disappeared? You don't think he got fired, or you don't know?
You know, Joan, in an office,
those kind
you
of
never
big office, because you didn't
hear.
work directly with him. He was sort of peripheral, kind of.
Peripheral.
I don't want to say stalking, that's probably not the right word, but he had eyed you, he had seen you, so, you know, he was there kind of trying to figure out, you know, if you were an easy target, let me say.
Right.
But let's
right.
also say that this guy is found out soon enough. You're not an easy target. Roxanne, I know there's more to tell, but we're going to go ahead and take a little break here. I think, sadly, I think there are some other cases, aren't there, that you've run
I'm
into?
saving my favorite.
Oh, the biggest for last. There
The
you
biggest
go.
for
There you
last.
go, listeners. Woman Power today on the Joan Jerkovich Show. Stay with me here on the Joan Jerkovich Show. We're at News Radio 1150 KSAL. We'll be right back.
Now I know why we talk for hours. That was the fastest 15 minutes of
I
my
know,
life.
that's what I thought he should do.
I
We're
saw
gonna
that
sit-
15, I thought,
You
can't
and I
be.
were sitting here going, oh
Can't
my
be.
gosh.
Well, we go out for lunch and it might last for 3 hours. So
I know. And we keep trying to connect on that too, don't we? Oh, I'm so proud of you, and to me you're just my hero. And I'm going to try not to get emotional because, as you know, I took a call from someone else, another person locally that has quite a story to tell. And I think we need to stand together. Women need to stand together. But your stories are so powerful from my perspective, because
You're here with
you have some of these nuances that you're letting women know that's it. That's the real deal. Stand up, take action.
KSAL will be
You know,
right
'cause
back.
it's just like you said. It's me. It's this. It's that.
I knew how it made me feel.
Absolutely.
Feel
You're so
1150.
right about that.
KSAL will be right
And it's-
back.
Whenever
It's
you're
just-
ready for us to pop back up, Adam.
Right, I was just cutting off the beginning and the end, making it pretty, so.
Oh, well, you're just over there working. So let's get back going, and because I know, we've got another one coming here.
Yep.
So
Whenever you're ready, we're good.
you're back with the Joan Jerkovich Show. We're talking about women empowerment today. I'm here with my guest, Roxanne Bell, who's talking to us about her personal instances. I would keep wanting to say stories, but I'm calling them her truths, her personal truths about the sexual harassment she's encountered, all the way from a young career woman till what she says is now waiting for us with this kind of bombshell, the really big one. Let's jump back in, Roxanne. I'm just telling you, and I wanted to talk to the listeners here for a moment about how I'm so proud of you and thankful that you've come on to talk, because some of what you're talking about are these little nuances, like the grandpa who was rubbing your back. And you're like, that doesn't feel right to me. He was the one everybody supposedly liked, his hugs and all that, but not you. And you were okay. You were not only okay, you were right. From everything I'm learning about sexual harassment in the workplace, you were right to report that to your supervisor.
Well,
You know,
thank you.
listen to that first segment. If you haven't, listeners, you can listen at joanjerkovich.com. Go back and listen on the podcast. But sadly, that didn't go anywhere. Get us back up to date. What's our next story?
Well, again, what I want to encourage women is when it doesn't feel right, you need to talk to somebody about it, because there's no reason for you to put up with it. The next situation was again in the office, and I was working with another woman, thank goodness, on a project. And I must have ruffled some feathers, because a gentleman walked in that didn't like the way things were going and said, I'm going to go home and get my shotgun. I'm going to come back here and make everything right.
Whoa, that's not even sexual harassment. That's like a criminal threat.
Yes. The man then walked out of the room, and I froze in fear. Now, this was before we
Repeat
had...
that for me. That's just, I'm just kind of sitting here blown away.
Now, this was before we had the school shootings and the office
Yeah.
shootings, this kind of thing. So
Before
it was
the guns in
preliminary.
the workplace we knew, or even talk about guns.
But this man, he scared me.
No kidding.
And this other woman, it scared her because she started going, ah, ah. I didn't know if she was going to laugh or start crying. And I thought, this isn't right what he did. But he laughed. And I thought, is he going to come back with a gun? In retrospect, had I gone through this again, I'd have picked up the phone and called 911, which is what I should have done. But at the time, it was kind of a new thing. And yet, there were men that like to say this. I know men in the community have done that before, publicly, and got caught with it. This was a rather private situation. And I was frightened. My husband was out of town that night. I went home. He was not there. I expected Rambo to come busting into my house with the bullets across his vest and his gun and shoot me, because I knew he was angry at me. I thought he might kill me.
You totally got from what he said and the tone of how he
Yes.
said it, his tone of voice, that he was very angry. And this was a serious criminal threat to get his gun and take care of it.
Exactly.
Wow,
Until
that is
the
scary.
day-
And I would have never thought to call 911.
No, I
Even
didn't.
today,
No.
because I know this is in the past, as you and I
Uh-huh.
talked before you came in, I wouldn't have even thought today. But yes, call 911.
Well, so
And then you had a witness. Keep
I
telling
had a
us.
witness. And I said, did you hear what he said? And she goes, yes. And she was younger than me and looked very frightened too. I said, well, I will report this. It's up to you to do what you want to do. So then I went to my supervisor, and this person became unglued. She said, I can't believe he did that. And she says, I will take care of this. And apparently,
So you seem to have an ally
I
in
had
this
an ally then.
supervisor.
I had an ally in this supervisor. And the conversation, the individual was approached by his supervisor. And they asked the man, did you really say this? Did you really? They didn't believe me. They thought I was making it up.
Wow,
Fortunately,
that
the
is
man-
so
yeah.
commonly heard by the women I'm talking to. They don't believe me.
Well,
I'm sorry, don't get me started.
fortunately for me, man admitted it. He says, oh, yes, but I was
Oh,
just
he admitted
teasing.
it.
I was just teasing. I didn't really mean it. Okay. So then it came back to me that he was just teasing and that he really didn't mean it. And I shouldn't take it to heart. He wasn't going to hurt me. He wouldn't hurt anybody. Oh, I didn't know that. I was afraid. And all the time I worked in that clinic, I always wondered if he wouldn't walk into my office with a gun. I always wondered.
You did?
If this office
Oh,
goes down,
my.
I'm probably going to be the first one. Because don't you wonder sometimes who's going to come in your office now with a gun? Disgruntled employee, former employee, crazy, whoever. It crossed my mind of where I would hide in my office.
Wow.
How I would protect myself.
Oh my gosh. And you stayed at this job for how much longer with that person
I
also
really
employed?
don't want to answer that question.
Okay,
because
that's
I
fine.
don't want to cause
That's fine.
anyone to try to formulate someone.
But there
because-
was a period of time where he was continuing to work in the same place that you were.
Yes.
And you would go to work and wonder, should I hide behind my desk or under my, should I hit the floor?
Right.
What am I going to have to do if he shows up?
And this individual was surly to me every day after that.
Is that
Would not
right?
look me in the eye, would not talk to me. And if I said, good morning, he would grunt at me.
Oh
Yeah.
dear. Uh-oh.
So,
The
I-
hate and animosity carried on. It continued.
yes, it did. It did. And I did, again, would report this to my supervisor.
You would report the way he would talk to you
Yes.
in a kind of angry way because you'd had a very, very serious threat.
Yes. Yes, it was a serious threat. At the time, I didn't think it was that big a deal. I'm just being sensitive. I'm making a big deal out of it. I shouldn't be this way. But I had to deal with it. I felt afraid. And I told my husband about it. He was angry too. But what do you do? What do you do?
What did he recommend you do? What did
Go to my
he?
supervisor.
Okay, and when that kind of went nowhere, and you heard, oh, he was just teasing, he
Mhm.
didn't mean it, and you internally think, I'm being too sensitive.
Document, document, document.
Tell
Write
us
it
some more
down.
about that.
Tell it. It's very
It's
important
important.
to protect yourself.
Agree.
That when something happens, you sit down with a plain old piece of paper, a pen, and you write it down. First, date it and put the time. Write it down, write what happened, how it made you feel, and what you're going to do next. And then do it. And then if there's anyone comes back and doubts what you said, make a copy of what you've written down. You keep all the original copies and
Absolutely.
document it.
And document it at the time or shortly after. You've got times, you've got dates, it's fresh in your memory, it's fresh in your mind. Your reaction to it, your fear reaction of fear is going to be raw and needs to be documented.
And keep it at home. Don't file it in your desk
a
drawer.
really good point. I would not have thought of. Absolutely. And it's kind of funny, Roxanne, how some of the stories from women who've been through this start to sound familiar. They know they have to keep a record in any way that they can and document. Now, as you're saying that, you had a witness
Yes.
So often these things are not witnessed. Do you have any advice or thoughts looking back on
Don't be
getting
afraid
her to
to stand
document
up.
or asking her to join you?
Don't be afraid to do it on your own, because she
Okay.
didn't want to go there. And I understand that. I really do. Not that it's right, but she was where she was, and I had to do what I had to do. So I did it. And I don't regret the things that I did. I just wish I would have done more at the time, because it was not right and it was illegal.
Absolutely. It was a criminal threat, I would say, but I'm not an attorney. I mean, that's just my sense of it. I mean, this goes, I mean, not that sexual harassment isn't also in these kinds of workplace harassment issues that can maybe go beyond sexual. They can be gender-based, because I think that was maybe the other situation of the guy that was trying to talk to you about, oh, you think you're too educated, or why are you coming late to work? That seemed very gender specific in some regards, but it can be relative to being the wrong color, being the wrong whatever, you know, that these kinds of workplace harassments can happen. But yours just went, to me, over the top.
Well, thank you.
No, it did.
I
No,
always
it
downplayed
did.
them all these
Oh
years
my
and
gosh,
thinking,
no,
oh,
no,
not that
no,
big
no,
of a
no,
deal,
no,
but
no. We're
this is
here to
what happened.
witness. We're here to listen. We're here to empower you. But really, Roxanne, I just love that I just couldn't believe, I was blown away that you wanted to come and tell your story, because you're so known in this community and so credible. And that's, you know what, you know, there's always the, let's just say, the people who make allegation that then people will come in behind what they've
Yes.
said and say, oh, they're not believable, they're not credible.
Yes.
I'm your good friend. I've admitted to that. We know that. I'm telling everybody that. But if anybody wants to come up and tell me my friend Roxanne isn't credible and isn't telling the truth, they can come talk to Joan, because I'm here to defend that.
Well, thank you.
I've known you
Thank
for
you.
so long. You know, I know your character, and so many people in this town do. And that's why I think it's just so empowering. And even women, it's crazy, the women who, knowing I've been working on this show, kind of came out of the woodwork. And it's been extremely emotional for me. I literally, right before you came into the studio, was in tears, hoping I wouldn't break down talking to you about this, because this is a current situation going on, and she's very frustrated. And I'm just not here to expose her or talk about her on the radio, but really just as a woman to support her and to let her know that you know, I want to tell her I believe you. You know, now, do I know that any of these stories, and I hate to say including yours, do I know that it's true? No, it comes down to your word, and it comes back to that he said, she said.
Exactly.
And all I can say is, do I know for certainty that your story, Roxanne, or these other women's stories are true? No. But do I know do I feel that I believe them? Yes, I do. And when I tell them that, I cannot tell you how powerful that is. How that moment when we're talking woman to woman, when I say, I believe you. Is that important to you as well?
It is. It is very important.
Yeah. Was that a big piece of it too? You know, being two things I hear from women that just really are heartbreaking. They don't feel believed, or they feel minimized.
Exactly.
Too sensitive. He's just a grandpa type. He does that to
Yeah.
everybody.
Am I trying to stir the pot?
Yeah.
Am I trying to cause problems?
Right.
That's my first thought. And I don't want to hurt anybody or their credibility. That's not my goal.
No, you're not mentioning names. We know you've worked out of state. We know you've worked all over. So, and I do know this is in your past.
This
Some
is
ways
in
in
my
your
past.
past. So,
Yes.
so I don't think anything we've talked about here is any more than you're telling the truth of the realities of being harassed in the workplace.
And how hard it is, especially when you're not believed, and that you have to stand up for it against people. And if you're not believed, then you start wondering, maybe I shouldn't do this. But you must stand firm, and you must go forth and let the truth be known so it doesn't happen to anybody else.
You're tearing up. I'm tearing up. We're sitting here. That was powerful, because you're just encouraging these women to be strong. Do what they know they need to do. Speak up and say what they need to say. because we owe it to each other. You know, we also owe it to stop these perpetrators, let's just say. And also, another thing that I was talking to someone in human resources, and this is another slant on it, you know, we kind of owe it to the men, let's just say, who are doing this, because we want everyone to succeed. We want them to succeed as well. Maybe the grandpa who's always pawing on the women in the hallway doesn't realize that's inappropriate, and it's not going to speak well for you. It's not going to carry well into your next job, a good reference. So sometimes, you know, if, let's give them benefit of the doubt, there's a piece of ignorance going on here that they don't even realize that asking you out for the 10th time when you've said no for 10 times is sexual harassment. We need to be there to support these people as well.
That's a really good point, Joan. And one thing I want to add is that, yeah, we want to educate men, and we also need to realize it's not just men that do this. There are women who assault men, and there are men who sexually assault other men,
Yes.
and women who
Yes.
sexually assault other women. So this message is really for everybody, not just women.
You're absolutely true. And not only talking about any kind of sexual harassment in the workplace, but any kind of harassment, workplace harassment, goes all over the board, like you're saying. In fact, something I want to throw out here, and we're going to talk some more about it with one of my other guests, that a woman such as your friend who witnessed this criminal threat about the gun could also file her own claim. Because think about it, it traumatized her as well. Did you get that?
Yes.
Now, if you're watching and observing a woman being harassed in the workplace, and he's not doing it to me, but you're my coworker and I've witnessed it and I'm seeing it, then you too, I didn't realize this, but you too can file a claim for sexual harassment. You know someone's downloading pornography at work.
Oh,
Maybe
wow.
they're sitting there on their computer not meaning for you to see it, but you walk by and see it. That's an uncomfortable situation, work environment for you that is a legal issue, can be a legal issue. We're going to head into a break, and I think it's just so great that you've come to talk to me. I cannot thank you enough for coming. What a brave soul you are. What a dear friend you are. What a friend to women you are, Roxanne.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And let's stay tuned. We have more here with you for the Joan Jerkovich Show. You're with your life coach here on News Radio 1150 KSAL.